Good afternoon, welcome to our main stage panel room. Please put your hands together and welcome our moderator, author Kimberley Bouchard.
Well, good afternoon. How are y'all doing? It's great to be here. I'm so happy to be invited to be a part of this wonderful expo again, and absolutely delighted to interview our next two guests. You know, I don't know if you know this, but Bambi was released 81 years ago. You know, you think about all the generations that had the opportunity to see that film. And you know what? It was actually it debuted in the UK and then 2 months later here in the US. So I think we're just very blessed to have two of the main characters. We have Donnie Dunagan, Bambi, the voice of Bambi, and we have Peter Behn, the voice of Thumper, to join us today. So, Mark? So I'll introduce you in order. Peter Behn, the voice of Thumper, and Donnie Dunagan, the voice of Bambi. I was just mentioning how it was 81 years ago that film was, you know, we got, well, I didn't get to see it, but you know, somebody saw it.
I saw it. It was August of 1942.
You know what? I was wondering when was the first time you saw it? So that, because it was released in the UK, but you probably got special privileges to see it before.
No. That was my first viewing.
Wow. And how about you, Donnie?
I was at the premiere
Okay.
in some valley north of Los Angeles. I'm sure it has a fancy name now that I've forgotten. It was just wonderful. Just wonderful.
So, yeah, you know, I was just thinking, I mean, those are iconic roles. How in the world did you become, how did you get to be Thumper and how did you get to be Bambi? Peter?
Well, my father was a screenwriter in Hollywood, and he knew that Disney was about to produce a new major film, and he took me over to audition actually for the part of Bambi. And if you remember Thumper and think about it, Thumper did not have the personality or the voice to be Bambi. So this guy snuck in.
So you went out to audition for Bambi initially, and then did they just sort of pass you the role of Thumper then, or?
Well, the animators wanted to see what else was. There were, as far as I know, there were like 30 kids who auditioned.
Okay.
And the animators wanted to hear if there was anything else they could use.
Sure.
So as they listened to the voices that they'd already recorded, one of the animators said, "Hey, that kid would be great for the rabbit." And there were no auditions for it.
Oh. And how about you, Donnie? How did you get to be Bambi?
I can't wait to share this with you.
He's getting all right.
I've been in 7 films with parts from age 4.5 until now 5.5. Okay, that stole your childhood. People say that must have been wonderful. Film rehearsal. Didn't get into public school until 7.5. You know, a lot of movies, all with parts. And even some of them, that little blonde, curly-headed jerk kid, me, you know, with the co-star position. Mr. Disney called my mother in our first little house out of the Depression. It was wonderful. Little house near UCLA in the suburb of Los Angeles, right? On the kitchen phone, I'll never forget. Remember the phones that came out of the wall like this? I was there. And Disney, wonderful Disney, does not mind my being 100% canon on these things, or I wouldn't say nothing, okay? We didn't know peanut butter about Disney. We never went to the movies. It wasn't time. It was work. Right? My mother barely knew that Mr. Disney on the phone, personal, was with a film company. That's how naive we were. And he must have sold her with some excitement about coming up to the new studios in Behn, in Burbank, California, and talking about being the model, the facial model, not the voice. Okay? We still have newspaper articles about this. Facial model and the action model to put some silly kid me into a more sedate little deer, right? My mom's all excited. Oh boy. And we weren't doing anything yet then, after 7 films. She called my manager. This is what I want to share with you. Call my manager. I didn't like him anyway, already. I'm 5.5, 5.25, and maybe 5 going on 9 or 10 because of all the films, okay? And told him that Mr. Disney had called. Apparently, he said something evil to my mom on the phone. I'm watching this, right? I don't box shit. I wish I had, okay? Here he comes, zoom, in 15 minutes from somewhere in Los Angeles, in a big limousine with a hood like football field. Remember the car limousine? In the house. This is not verbatim. This is a bridge for you. You can't do that. He'll spoil everything. He's just being some silly cartoon. Blah 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 blah. Really rude to my mother. It got progressive. My mother finally said, "I love this one. Donnie, what do you think?" I want to do it. You can't do it. Then he got rude a bit to me. Then really rude to my mother. I love this one. Mr. Disney, when he found out about this, he really loved this one. I fired the jerk. And Variety magazine loved it to death. Donnie Dunagan, age 5, fires his manager. And when Mr. Disney found out about that, I could have been a jerk and got the job. He loved it.
So did you actually go out to audition, or they just sort of, did you evolve into the character initially, or?
In the first month or two, ma'am, I sat on a stool in a real nice room with a series of artists that I do not appreciate yet. In a semicircle around me, I call them the pencil guys. That's how sophisticated I was. Pencil guys, And they look left, look right, look afraid, hold it. Now, mind you, I've been to some movies I never had been to this way. Oh, remember early in the film when Bambi does something dumb? And he's in the thicket like this? And the girl Feline sticks her head through and gives him a dear kiss. Remember that? Now, mind you, he hadn't discovered ladies yet, okay? And as soon as he got the kiss, what do? I had to hold that for 30 minutes. So Peter and I called that the castor oil scene kiss, because that's what they told me I just had.
So, Peter, when you were doing the film, so how did you get into the character of Thumper? I mean, you had that down with all the things they made you do, but Peter, what about little Thumper?
Well, I think it happened in the recording studios. I was in, a small recording room, and with a director who would read the lines with the inflection that was needed, and doing funny things to make me laugh and all of that. And that was kind of fun. Particularly right in the recording room, they had this recorder, which is not a tape, wasn't anything that we would know of today. It was a big wax disc about 20 inches in diameter, with a big arm came over and made the recording. And I was fascinated by that. I've sort of always been fascinated by gadgets. And so I thought that was really neat. And it was just fun, because the guy who was in there with me was, basically playing with me and making me do the things that I did. And so that was where the personality came out that Thumper has, just from horsing around. There was no talent involved. It was just the way it was just the way it was in those days.
So you guys were both around, what, 4.5, 5?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't remember much when I was 4.5, 5. So this is amazing, actually.
Well, there were 5, or for me, there were 8 recording sessions over a couple of years when I was 4 and 5. And the no lip sync involved.
Sure.
In those days, the voice came first and the drawing came after. So what they were doing was recording the sessions that had, drawing the sessions that had been recorded, and then they'd sort of adjust the script the way they wanted it to go based on the voices, etc. And I had moved out of Hollywood at the time to Tucson, Arizona. And my father became a professor at the university. And
So you kind of got it all done, like in those 8 sessions?
well, no, so then I had to go back to Hollywood with my mother on the train a couple of times for the final recording sessions. Yeah. Train was fun. I had a bunk that came, a sleep car, so that I thought that was kind of cool.
Sure, trains are pretty neat, and I can understand Walt's fascination with them. Donnie, so you were doing all the expressions that they were trying to use and create with Bambi. So when did it transition into that, hey, you would sound like a good Bambi?
A lot of people expect a very sophisticated answer to this. Sometimes the most wonderful things in the world happen like, so what? Yeah. Mr. Disney took us to lunch. I think it's about the 3rd time this has happened. He was a very gracious man. Wasn't a pompous executive show-off guy. Okay? He was a leader by example and a very keen humanist. Okay? He took my mom and me to lunch, and I tried to get him to sit. That's where the ice cream was. I remember that. That didn't work. Anyway, took us to lunch. I'd been at least 4, maybe 4.5 months from near UCLA into New Burbank. No freeways, lots of stop signs. Remember the stop signs? Ding, 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 ding. That's how I used to count miles. That he lives 5 ding dings away. So we're at lunch, and I think we were probably near sitting in the stool deal, and Mr. Disney, this is how sophisticated this was, Mr. Disney looked at my mom and said, how about him doing the voice? My mom says to me, very clever, like, sure.
So he probably heard your intonation and kind of saw that you're maybe a bit of a character? And,
but I don't know. But I need to share this with you, okay? 2 things. They're really important to me. I'm 88, 25 years in the Marine Corps, and doing a lot of stuff you probably want to hear about, okay? And a lot more. Seen some life, some real life. The folks like you that come and see this fellow and put up with him and me, okay? And these events are the best audiences, the best collection of people that I experience, and I'm in a ton of committees and have to go to a whole bunch of them that they took salmon eggs for breakfast. You know what I mean? You guys are wonderful. Folks who come to these kind of conventions are very different than the assemblies and all kinds of other civic things. And to you who still love Bambi, and this guy, whose lines I've stolen, I don't mind admitting him. Like the first time to an orphanage in Panama Canal area, I'll go in. There's a large orphanage there, and I was a guest for other reasons. Salvation Army, not employed, board member. They had a bully and they're not showing me about this bully. And I can see where you're sitting. Okay? They're going to show Bambi. Big tree for these kids. This is a big orphanage. Big orphanage, okay? And I couldn't help it. First time, I should have thought about it before. When the opportunity was right, I said, what did Thumper say that means the most to you? And I said, finally, one little girl barely said it about saying something. And that was my clue. If you can't say something nice, what?
Don't say
And if you can't do, and I changed it, a copyright change. If you can't do something nice, just try to be nice. And then right up to the bullet guy, and I was just a few years out of the Marine Corps that I knew how to assert myself and give it. And it worked.
That I love. You know what? Actually, I heard that from my mom a lot. Actually, if you can't say something, nice, don't say it at all. And not that I was saying something naughty or anything, but I'm just no, seriously. But Peter, I was wondering, did you use that on your children and grandchildren?
I think everybody.
Oh. Okay, so it wasn't just my mom. Okay.
It may be one of the most remembered quotes from a movie that ever occurred. Because it had a useful purpose in raising kids.
Yeah, of course, yeah. You guys have made the rounds through the years, I know. But did you guys know each other when you were actually doing the film? Or when did you guys first meet?
We first met on The View.
What?
The TV show.
Yeah, I know. That's years, decades.
60 years after we had done. We didn't meet prior to that, right? That was the first time on the View. And Whoopi Goldberg was on there with us, which was awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. So what were your thoughts? That's a long time to be meeting somebody, actually.
Well, all the voices were done independently.
Right, of course.
It wasn't, they didn't act the entire movie out together.
Sure. Right.
So they pieced it all together.
But you would think that maybe they'd have a little rap party for you guys or something. No?
No.
Speaking of meeting, and I know you've mentioned going for lunch with Walt, did you both have an opportunity to meet with Walt Disney?
Well, I think Donnie probably met with him more than I did.
Okay.
I was with him. They had that little zoo with the animals, so that the artists could see what, like a deer has their knees go backwards, and so you think about.
I gotta look at that again.
Next time you look at a picture of a deer, so it's quite different anatomically than other creatures.
Sure.
So it was helpful that they had this. They had a bunny there and a little skunk that was
Descented.
And so that's where I met Walt first.
Okay.
And then one other time sort of in passing.
Sure.
But I think Donnie met with him more than I did.
Okay, Donnie, so spill the beans, because the only time I met Walt, is at his gravesite. So that, but I'll tell you, that was a real cherished moment. So I always love to hear those of you that actually knew him, because I think he's just an amazing human.
If my mother had discovered one of these meetings, I had a lot of time with him. If my mom had discovered one of these things I'm about to tell you about, I'd probably eat peanut butter for a month. Okay? Early on in the work, as this bright man who really did a great job in that, huh? Excuse me. Very early on, look at this little child here, cutest thing. I remember asking, what does a deer look like? Now that caused it, oh my gosh, you're being what does a deer look like? They showed me drawings and gave me a book, okay? I'll never forget it, nice lady, okay? well, why don't we have a real deer here? And I think that may have been the trigger for them finally bringing in some live animals. But Disney, don't get mad at me now. Deer, particularly young deer, if there's not some stimuli, okay, they're like this. You know? The Salmonex deal, you know what I mean? You know? Anyway, the funniest thing ever with Mr. Disney was walking down the hall. I think halfway through the voice work was pulsating weeks at a time because of the artwork, okay? Walking down the hall, going someplace where I hope I was supposed to go, maybe not in those days. And here comes Mr. Disney and his brother. I think his brother. I was never introduced to his brother. He was a very well-groomed man in a three-piece suit, as was common in those days. And here they come down the hallway, okay? And he puts his hand up. I said, Donnie, they just took you to the zoo, right? I've been griping about, what's a deer look like? So they finally put me in a limousine with some Bambi officers coming up, and my mom, and we went to some zoo nearby, Burbank, California, and there was one deer in the pit, very well-groomed pit, right? And this is, they're going to show me the deer that we're doing, right? Here's this deer, right?
Not too impressive.
Yeah, and one of the Disney men with the fancy suit on went to a machine, gave me some corn, and I got close and threw the corn down right in front of this guy, right? Watch, here's the deer. Watch.
Okay.
Didn't eat them, didn't do nothing. So here's why Mr. Disney stopped me in the hallway. And 3 days later, at the zoo, I turned around after he didn't respond to my corn, and I said this, gulp. Mom, I don't want to be that guy, he's boring.
Did that get back to Walt?
Oh, these two guys behind me ratted me out. So now 2 days later, maybe 3, I'm coming down the hall, he stops me, and like I said a minute ago, puts his hand on my shoulder. He was a gracious guy, I really liked him. Put his hand on my shoulder and looked at me, big smile, said, Donnie, you went to the zoo, you saw a real deer. Yeah, sure. He said, I had the brains to do that, right? Yeah, sure. Huh? Guess what, Donnie? Our Bambi will not be boring. Was it?
Yeah. Oh, isn't that wonderful? That, you know, I still think it's just incredible that you got to actually interact with the guy that was responsible for all of this magic worldwide. And you know, you had mentioned that he was a very gracious fellow and all that. Is that your take on him as well, Peter?
Well, as I said, I didn't have as much interaction with him as Donnie did, but yes, he was very gracious the few times that I met him.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear some of the folks that have been a part of him, you know, when he was alive, that he was often known as a bit of an uncle or a grandfather. Did you guys get that kind of impression, or was he not? I'm not sure what Donnie thinks.
If I had not been in 7 movies in other big studios, okay, I would not have had a contrast. You understand what color is against another color, right? I would not have had the contrast. I don't want you to think I'm so damn wise about this, all right? And some of the other studios, I can remember this well, because my mom would even pick up on it, right? Well, everybody's working. The big guys move. The studios in those days, like the castles, were heavy wood. It took 15 linebackers to move that stuff around, you know. Huh? In other studios, when the executive would come walking in, 3-piece suit, boom, 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 people would say, oh, uh-oh, here he comes. Oh, watch out for a leader. Here he comes. You'll be welcoming a leader, right? Huh? Oh my, and even hide from him. When Mr. Disney would come around, commonly with his sleeves rolled up, helping artwork, helping ideas, and very seldom correcting. My mom picked up on this. Very seldom correcting. If he saw something he wanted a bit different, he said, "Hey, how about this?" That kind of, that's not verbatim, but that's a style. You know what I'm saying? He was a real leader. After 25 years in the Marine Corps, I can tell you I understand the difference, right? He was a real leader by example and a character man. And I remember a little bit, I wish I was closer to it, a little bit what he did one Christmas, Christmas of 41, right after Pearl Harbor, okay? When he made a decision, listen to this, folks, we discovered young executives at Disney today did not know this, so you got a scoop, okay? Mr. Disney, after Pearl Harbor, gave Disney to what was called the War Department then, okay? Gave up a ton of money on his brand new organization to help the War Department with training films, motivational films, recruiting films. Now, where do you find that in our commerce? Like today, zero, right? He's a great guy.
Yeah. No, you know, it's very interesting you mentioned that that is the strategy he took about trying something different with the animators. Because, you know, any artist, be an actor, be a painter or whatever, you know, they're sensitive to their work, of course. And I think Walt knew as an artist himself how he would feel, right? If somebody wanted to make changes to his design or whatnot. So I think that's fantastic. So did your parents got to meet Walt as well? Did they spend any time?
Well, they certainly did. My father, being in the movie industry, did know Walt, but I was not part of any of that interaction. Excuse me, I had RSV about 2 months ago, and my voice hasn't recovered since.
Do you need some water? Do you know?
No, I'm fine, thanks. So I don't know if I can add a great deal to that, but everybody loved Walt. He was very highly regarded.
And your parents must have been thrilled that you were cast in a Walt Disney film, I would imagine? Or did they not really know what they were getting themselves, or you into?
Well, my father knew what was going to happen, or
Sure.
what was involved in being a young actor in Hollywood. And actually it turned out that he didn't want me to grow up being a Hollywood brat.
Oh.
Which is the main reason he left Hollywood. He was making a lot of money as a screenwriter, but he gave that up to move to the University of Arizona in Tucson. And he went from making about $1,000 a week as a screenwriter, which was a lot of money in those days, to a job at the University of Arizona for $5,000 a year.
Wow.
As a college professor.
But he believed in his family life, right? He wanted something different.
He also wanted to revise his career a little bit. He became a writer. He wrote children's books and had 16 books in print all at the same time.
Oh my goodness, that's
So,
incredible.
Yeah, and he was an artist also. Many of the books were, he illustrated himself.
Nice.
Yeah, it was an interesting life.
Absolutely. Now, Donnie, how did your parents feel about you being cast into a production like this? Were they pretty thrilled about it, or did they kind of just say, here's another one, or I don't know.
They did not have the awareness of the industry. Like, we came out of the Depression before those 7 films. I mean, like, really out of the Depression, right? So they weren't cultured enough to really have that. I didn't remember hearing that. I know my dad heard about Mr. Disney, never met him, from my mom and me, and had some respectful remarks to make. As a tag on to what Peter shared with you about the studio and life and Disney, let me share this with you. Last November, I finally found a retired professor out at MIT and a sitting professor in Stanford to help me with this. Okay? And I've asked Disney, why haven't you looked at this? Okay? And on email and phone, in a nice way. Okay? Mr. Disney has got to be, from the research we've been able to do so far, has got to be the absolute first filmmaker in the Western world, English or French language, okay, in the Western world, the very first filmmaker to have the grit. The lady's presence here is pleasing up my vocabulary, okay? To have the grit to do environmental scenes. Environmental scenes, remember? The Forest Reckless Forest Fire? I was in the room when a staffer came in and told several people and told Mr. Disney, I'm going to use the word adverse. I don't know if that was the word or not, but and telling him he had received more adverse mail from men objecting to critiquing, slandering the forest scenes from reckless forest fires and the hunters, okay? And I don't remember his reaction, but it wasn't real pleasant, okay? And if that's not an environmental power, okay, what is? That has to be the very first time. That took some grit, and he got hate mail for it. We imagined, this is not verbatim, we imagined that some little granddaughter in maybe Montana, dad going out during the Depression. He's not a mean man, no, going out to shoot a deer hopefully for the family's meals for a while, right? But some little granddaughter that had just seen Bambi saying, Papa, you can't go out and shoot Bambi. Maybe that was the stimuli for the hate mail. But he needs some credit for that. He was a real pioneer in some things.
Visionary, and he followed through on his beliefs. I was just wondering, so you guys met him when you were little. Did you ever meet him when you guys were a bit older? Did you ever meet up with him again?
I did not, no.
Donnie, did you? No?
I had a chance and I blew it.
Oh.
I was in the Marine Corps and I wasn't commissioned yet, so I didn't have flexibility like I'd like to have. But I had one chance and I missed my timing and I blew it.
Oh, okay. You know, I have to ask you this because I like to ask people that have lived a good long life so far. Is there any wisdom that you can impart to us? And we can start with whoever. Donnie's pointing at Peter. I don't know. Peter's pointing at Donnie. About life, about, anything, really.
Well, I feel that I've had a very diverse and fun life. Moved around the country some, from California to Tucson to Connecticut and then to Vermont, where I lived most of my adult life. And always, in my adult life, always lived in a ski area. So I love snow, unlike a lot of people who are in Florida and Utah, where I now live. And I've done a lot of interesting things, like building an airplane and flying. And Pam and I used to fly from Vermont to the Bahamas every November, after the hurricane season, supposedly. Now you can't tell when hurricane season is. And so we enjoyed that. I feel I've had a very enjoyable life.
So enjoying life could be your piece of wisdom for all of us?
Well, yeah, and it gives you a good outlook on things. Instead of hate and disgruntledness with the world, although today there's a lot of disgruntledness, if you ask me. But anyway, that's sort of what I remember and feel good about my life.
Nice, thanks. Donnie?
I've been able to get, despite myself, more good things done because of a relationship to Bambi. In many events, get more things done than some some moderator or some host at a big convention. I've been to several, giving an introduction about so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. I reluctantly give you an example. And so-and-so, so-and-so has all these medals for this and this and this and this and this and been wounded 3 times, blah, 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 blah. Nice people like you, big audience, for trying to raise money for charity. I listen to that, it's respectful. As soon as one of us can get the Bambi in there, the smiles increase, the contributions increase, and we have one convention, one big one in Oklahoma City, 6 years ago, where we had to change the clock, to expand it, and we doubled the contributions to a then desperately needed Salvation Army area because of what? The medals, the baloney, all the other stuff, because of Bambi. Because of Bambi. Why? Because he was what? He fought the bullies, huh? Took care of things, wasn't pretentious, huh? Confessed when he did something silly, right? And a real, genuine love story, and this uniqueness that even you wonderful people may not have had a chance to pick up on. It's one of the very few stories in films where it starts with the birth and finishes up on the plateau as a young adult leader, from birth to leadership. From birth to leadership, okay? I look you in the eye and I promise you on everything, okay? Been able to get more done. Good stuff, because of a Bambi relationship than all the other, the White House stuff and everything. I promise you on honor. I love Bambi like you do.
I want to thank you guys so much for sharing a piece of your life with us, because not only have we learned things historically, but we got a chance to carry a little bit of Bambi in our hearts from this talk today. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I would like to say one last thing, that the fact that what we did 80-some years ago has carried on and affected young kids and families and so forth, and it continues, and I'm sure it will continue after we're gone. And it's a comforting feeling and to have done that. And I thank you all for loving Bambi and Thumper, and that it has had a meaningful experience for your lives. Thanks.
Thank you.